The sterile scent of the hospital clung to Emily Garner like a shroud, a constant reminder of her helplessness. Her mother, Sarah, lay frail and pale in the intensive care unit, her breaths shallow and labored, each one a testament to the devastating illness that had swept through their lives like a cruel storm. The medical bills, a growing mountain of despair on her kitchen table, mocked her meager savings and threatened to crush her beneath their impossible weight. Emily, a young artist whose vibrant canvases once held so much promise, now saw only the bleak canvas of her detriment future. She worked 2 jobs, tutored students, and sold her smaller art pieces online, but it was a futile struggle against the relentless tide of medical expenses. Every day brought a new bill, a fresh wave of panic. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Then, the unexpected call came, a stark interruption to her waking nightmare. The voice on the other end was smooth, refined, utterly devoid of warmth, introducing himself as Mr. Blackwood, the legal representative of Jameson Drake. The name sent a shiver down Emily's spine. Jameson Drake. The reclusive billionaire whispered about in hushed tones in every corner of society. Stories painted him as a genius industrialist, a ruthless businessman, but also a man haunted by tragedy and cloaked in scandal. He rarely appeared in public, his life shrouded in mystery, fueling endless speculation. Some called him broken, others dangerous. All feared him. Mr. Blackwood's proposition was as chilling as it was unbelievable: a marriage contract. For a duration of 2 years, Emily would become Mrs. Jameson Drake. In exchange, her mother's entire medical debt, including all future expenses, would be fully settled, and Emily would receive a substantial monthly stipend. The terms were brutally transactional, devoid of any pretense of romance or affection. It was a business deal, plain and simple, a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Emily was aghast. Marry a stranger? A recluse surrounded by dark rumors? Her heart screamed in protest, fueled by a lifetime of dreams that centered on love, connection, and art. But then she looked at her mother's pale face through the ICU glass, heard the rhythmic beep of the machines, and the image of those crushing bills flashed before her eyes. Desperation, a cold, unyielding force, began to chip away at her idealism. What choice did she have? Her mother's life was paramount. Hesitantly, she agreed to a meeting. The setting was as grand as the man himself, a sprawling estate nestled deep in the secluded countryside, hidden behind towering gates and impenetrable walls. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the crunch of her tires on the gravel driveway. The mansion itself was a monolithic structure of dark stone and gleaming glass, devoid of any discernible warmth, reflecting the somber reputation of its owner. Jameson Drake was waiting for her in a vast, dimly lit study, surrounded by towering bookshelves and an intimidating oak desk. He was a formidable presence, even seated, tall with sharp, almost chiseled features, dark eyes that seemed to pierce right through her, and a lean, powerful build. His dark hair was meticulously styled, his expensive suit impeccable. There was an aura of absolute control about him, a stillness that was unnerving. He didn't offer a smile or even a greeting. His face was a mask of cold indifference, his gaze intense and unwavering. "Ms. Garner," he began, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that seemed to vibrate through the silent room. It was surprisingly resonant, yet devoid of any discernible emotion. "Mr. Blackwood has briefed you on my proposal." Emily swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. "Yes, Mr. Drake. Do you accept the terms?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if daring her to refuse. She met his gaze, forcing herself to appear composed, despite the tremor in her hands. I have some questions." He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his dark eyes. "Proceed." "Why me?" she asked, her voice steadying. "Why a marriage of convenience? And why such generous terms for a stranger?" He leaned back in his chair, a subtle shift in his posture, but his expression remained unreadable. "My reasons are my own. Suffice it to say, I require a wife for a period of time. You, Miss Garner, possess a clean record, no known entanglements, and a demonstrable need that aligns with my offer. The terms are non-negotiable. Your debt will be cleared, and you will receive a monthly stipend of $50,000. In return, you will reside here, fulfill the public duties of a life, and maintain discretion regarding our arrangement. Do you agree?" $50,000 a month. It was an astronomical sum, enough to cover her mother's ongoing care and secure their future. Her mother. The image of Sarah's frail form flickered in her mind, overriding every instinct for self-preservation. And my mother? Emily pressed, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. Her care? Her future medical needs? Guaranteed? Guaranteed, he stated, his voice flat, final. Until the end of the contract, or until her full recovery, whichever comes first. Emily closed her eyes for a brief moment, picturing her mother breathing easily, free from pain, free from the crushing weight of their financial burden. The decision, though heartbreaking in its implications for her own life, was made. She opened her eyes, met his unwavering gaze, and forced herself to utter the words that would irrevocably change her life. "I accept, Mr. Drake." A flicker, a fleeting, almost imperceptible shift in his dark eyes. Was it surprise? Relief? She couldn't tell. He simply nodded, a curt, dismissive gesture. "Mr. Blackwood will draw up the papers. You will move in by the end of the week. Arrangements for your mother's care will be made immediately." With that, the meeting was concluded. Emily was dismissed, left to grapple with the seismic shift in her reality. She was about to marry a man she knew nothing about, a recluse shrouded in mystery, a broken billionaire who had offered her a lifeline in exchange for her freedom. The icy halls of his mansion, she realized, were about to become her new home, and the silent dinners, her new reality. The true nature of Jameson Drake and the secrets he held remained a terrifying, tantalizing mystery. The week that followed was a dizzying blur of legal paperwork, medical transfers, and a frantic attempt to tie up the loose ends of her old life. Mr. Blackwood, a man of precise efficiency, orchestrated everything with military precision. Sarah was moved to a state-of-the-art private hospital wing, her care handled by a team of specialists, all expenses seamlessly covered. A wave of profound relief washed over Emily as she saw the worry lines on her mother's face begin to ease, replaced by a fragile peace. This, at least, was real. This was worth it. Leaving her small apartment, the one filled with her canvases and the echoes of a simpler life, was harder than she anticipated. She packed only the essentials, her art supplies, a few cherished photographs, and a handful of comfortable clothes. The rest she stored or donated, stripping away her old life in preparation for the new, unfamiliar one. On the appointed day, a sleek black limousine arrived to collect her. The drive to the Drake estate felt endless, the landscape slowly transforming from familiar cityscapes to rolling hills, and finally, dense, secluded forest. The gates, once intimidating, now seemed to loom like the entrance to a gilded cage. The mansion, bathed in the pale light of a setting sun, was even more imposing than she remembered. Its vastness swallowed her, the silence within its walls pressing down on her. A stern-faced housekeeper, Mrs. Hayes, greeted her at the imposing front doors, her expression unreadable, her posture rigidly formal. "Welcome, Mrs. Drake," Mrs. Hayes stated, her voice clipped and devoid of warmth. "Your rooms are prepared. Dinner will be served at 8. Mr. Drake requests your presence in the main dining hall." Emily followed Mrs. Hayes through dimly lit corridors, past hushed rooms filled with antique furniture and priceless artwork. The air was heavy, almost stagnant, devoid of any personal touches, any sign of a vibrant life. It felt more like a museum than a home. Her rooms were a sprawling suite, larger than her entire previous apartment, decorated in muted tones of gray, cream, and silver. A massive four-poster bed dominated the sleeping area, a luxurious oasis that felt strangely cold. She showered, changed into a simple, elegant dress she had bought for the occasion, and tried to steel herself for dinner. Her heart hammered with a nervous rhythm. This was it, her new reality. The main dining hall was a cavernous space, dominated by a long, polished mahogany table that could seat 20, yet only 2 places were set, at opposite ends. Jameson sat at one end, a solitary figure, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed on some unseen point across the room. He didn't look up as she entered, his presence a silent, imposing wall. Emily took her seat, the distance between them feeling vast, symbolic of the chasm that separated their lives. The clinking of silverware, the soft footsteps of the uniformed staff, were the only sounds that broke the oppressive silence. The meal, a multi-course affair of exquisite French cuisine, was consumed in an almost uncomfortable stillness. Jameson ate slowly, methodically, never meeting her gaze, never offering a word. Emily tried to initiate conversation once. "The soup is excellent, Mr. Drake," she offered, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. He merely grunted, a non-committal sound, his eyes still fixed on his plate. He didn't seem to acknowledge her presence, treating her more like an inanimate object than a person. The coldness was palpable, an invisible barrier that seemed to radiate from him. As the days turned into weeks, the routine solidified into a monotonous rhythm. Silent breakfasts, solitary days spent exploring the vast, empty mansion or reading in the equally vast, silent library. Dinner, always in the grand dining hall, always in silence, always with Jameson at the opposite end of the table, a distant, enigmatic presence. He would occasionally leave for business, his absence a quiet relief from the stifling atmosphere he created. Emily tried to find purpose in her new surroundings. She started sketching the mansion's architecture, its grand, yet somehow melancholic beauty. She found a neglected piano in one of the drawing rooms and began to play, her melodies echoing through the empty halls, a small act of rebellion against the pervasive silence. She discovered a hidden greenhouse, filled with dying, neglected plants, and began to tend to them, coaxing life back into their withered leaves. These small acts of creation and nurturing were her anchors, her way of retaining a semblance of her old self in this gilded cage. Her attempts to engage Jameson were met with polite, almost robotic dismissals. "How was your day, Mr. Drake?" she would ask. "Productive," he would reply, his voice flat. "Did you enjoy your meal?" she would inquire. "Adequate," he would murmur, his gaze unwavering. He was a man of minimal words, his face a perpetual mask. But Emily, observant by nature and accustomed to seeing beyond the surface in her art, began to notice subtle nuances. His eyes, though perpetually guarded, sometimes held a flicker of something she recognized: profound loneliness. Beneath the steel facade, behind the formidable reputation, she sensed a deep, unaddressed pain. A man who had built walls so high he had become a prisoner within them. She saw it in the way his shoulders would subtly slump when he thought no one was watching, in the fleeting shadows that crossed his eyes during their silent dinners, in the almost imperceptible tremor in his hand when he occasionally reached for his water glass. Her initial fear began to transform into a quiet curiosity, then a growing empathy. He wasn't just cold, he was broken. The scandal, the reclusiveness, the whispers of heartbreak, it was all a shield. Her heart, once solely focused on her mother's plight, began to stir with a new, unexpected purpose. She had married a broken billionaire to pay her debt, but she never expected that her kindness, a gentle, persistent warmth, might be the very thing he needed, a light that could slowly, tentatively, begin to melt the ice around his heart. The challenge, she realized, was far greater than simply surviving this arrangement. It was about reaching the man behind the mask. Emily's subtle acts of rebellion against the mansion's pervasive silence slowly began to chip away at the formidable walls surrounding Jameson Drake. Her melodies from the neglected piano, hesitant at first, grew bolder, filling the vast, empty spaces with life and color. She played classical pieces, then jazz, then improvisations that spoke of yearning and hope. She never saw Jameson listen directly, but sometimes, during her impromptu concerts, she felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a fleeting stillness that hinted at his awareness. Her passion for nurturing the dying plants in the greenhouse blossomed. She spent hours there, coaxing life back into withered leaves, replanting, pruning, and bringing vibrant blooms back into existence. She started bringing small potted flowers into the mansion, placing them in strategic locations, a splash of color against the austere decor. A bright crimson orchid appeared on a console table in the main hall, a fragrant jasmine plant on a windowsill in the sunroom, a silent challenge to the mansion's pervasive chill. Jameson never commented on the music or the plants. He continued his silent dinners, his dismissive grunts. But Emily noticed. One evening, as she played a particularly melancholic Chopin nocturne, she glanced towards the main staircase. Jameson stood there, half hidden in the shadows, his shoulders less rigid than usual, his gaze fixed on some distant point, listening. The moment was fleeting, and he disappeared as quickly as he appeared, but it was enough. A tiny spark of hope ignited within Emily. Another evening, she placed a small, vibrant bouquet of freshly cut roses from the greenhouse on the dining table, directly in front of Jameson's usual seat. When he sat down, his gaze flickered to the flowers, a momentary pause before he resumed his stoic demeanor. Later that night, as Emily walked past the dining hall, she noticed the roses were still there, unmoving, untouched, but not removed by the staff. It was a minuscule victory, but a victory nonetheless. Her mother's recovery, meanwhile, continued its steady progress. Sarah was now out of the ICU, transferred to a rehabilitation facility, her strength slowly returning. Emily visited her daily, bringing her stories of the strange, gilded cage she now inhabited, carefully omitting the more isolating details. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, saw only her daughter's safety and her own burgeoning health. "You're doing well, my dear," she would say, her voice still weak but filled with gratitude. This was the right choice. One particularly stormy evening, the mansion was plunged into darkness as a power outage swept through the secluded estate. The emergency generators kicked in, but only provided dim, sporadic light. Emily, accustomed to making do in her smaller, less luxurious life, lit candles in the study, creating a warm, flickering glow. Jameson, who had been cloistered in his office, emerged, a startled expression on his face. He seemed unnerved by the darkness, his rigid posture subtly less controlled. "Are you all right, Mr. Drake?" Emily asked, her voice soft, empathetic. "It seems the storm has affected the power." He merely grunted, moving to the window, staring out into the rain-lashed darkness. "It's inconvenient," he muttered, his voice unusually strained. Emily noticed his discomfort, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. She remembered whispers of his past, of a traumatic event, a fire, that had left him reclusive and withdrawn. Was this darkness triggering something for him? Perhaps a cup of tea would help, she offered, moving towards the small kitchen attached to the study. "It's quite cozy with the candles." He hesitated, then, to her surprise, gave a curt nod. "Very well." As she prepared the tea, the silence was less oppressive, the flickering candlelight creating a more intimate atmosphere. When she handed him the steaming cup, their fingers brushed. His hand was surprisingly cold, and she noticed a faint tremor. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice softer, almost hesitant. It was the first genuine expression of gratitude she had heard from him. They sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the gentle tapping of rain against the windows. Emily spoke then, softly, about her art, about the joy of creating, about the simple beauty she found in the world. She spoke of her mother's progress, her quiet hope for her full recovery. She didn't expect a reply, simply offering a glimpse into her own inner world, a fragile bridge across the vast chasm between them. Jameson listened, his gaze fixed on the flickering candle flame, his expression unreadable. But Emily felt a subtle shift, a softening in the rigid lines of his shoulders, a slight easing of the tension in the room. Later that evening, as the power returned, flooding the mansion with harsh artificial light, the moment passed. Jameson retreated back into his shell, his face resuming its stoic mask. But something had changed. The brief glimpse into his vulnerability, the shared silence, had forged a tiny, almost imperceptible connection. Emily knew then, with a quiet certainty, that beneath the cold steel facade, there was a man capable of feeling, a broken man yearning for a kindness he never expected. And she, in her unlikely role as his contracted wife, was determined to reach him. The brief, candlelit interlude during the power outage marked a subtle, yet significant turning point in Emily's relationship with Jameson. The rigid wall between them didn't crumble, but a tiny crack appeared, allowing faint glimmers of his hidden self to emerge. He still maintained his stoic demeanor, his minimal words, and his habit of silent dinners, but Emily sensed a shift. He began to acknowledge her presence in a subtle way. He no longer simply grunted when she spoke, sometimes offering a single-word reply that acknowledged her question. He would occasionally watch her as she played the piano or as she tended to the flowers in the mansion. His gaze, though still distant, held a flicker of something new, a quiet observation that wasn't dismissive. Emily continued her gentle campaign of warmth. She left small, thoughtful gestures for him, a freshly brewed cup of his favorite, specific blend of coffee on his desk in the morning, a new book from a genre she knew he enjoyed subtly placed on his reading table, a small handcrafted drawing of the mansion's stately oak trees left in his study. She never made a grand display, just quiet acts of kindness that hinted at her presence, her consideration. He never commented on these gestures, but the next morning, the empty coffee cup would be gone. The book would be opened to a new page, and the drawing would be carefully placed on a less prominent spot, indicating it hadn't been discarded. These small confirmations fueled Emily's resolve, affirming that her efforts were not entirely in vain. Her mother's condition continued to improve steadily. Sarah was now able to walk with assistance, her voice growing stronger, her spirits lifting with each passing day. Emily brought her more flowers from the greenhouse, vibrant and fragrant, filling her hospital room with a burst of life. Sarah, unknowingly, became Emily's source of strength, a constant reminder of the reason she had entered this strange, contractual marriage. One afternoon, Emily was sketching in the main drawing room, her charcoal moving fluidly across the paper, capturing the intricate details of a large, melancholic portrait hanging on the wall. It was a painting of a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with eyes that held a profound sadness. Emily had often wondered about her, a silent observer of the mansion's pervasive melancholy. Jameson entered the room, a rare occurrence during the day. He stopped, his gaze falling on her sketch, then on the portrait. For the first time, his stoic mask faltered. A profound sadness, a raw, aching pain, flashed across his features. "That was my sister, Eleanor," he said, his voice unusually soft, laced with a vulnerability that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. It was the longest sentence she had ever heard him utter about his personal life. She passed away years ago. Emily's heart went out to him. The rumors, the scandals, the reclusiveness, it all began to make sense. This was the source of his pain, the heartbreak that had broken him and built his formidable walls. "I'm so sorry, Jameson," she murmured, using his first name instinctively, her voice filled with genuine empathy. He flinched at her words, as if the unexpected kindness had struck a raw nerve. He turned away, regaining his composure almost instantly, his face once again a mask of ice. "It's irrelevant," he muttered, his voice curt, dismissing the moment. He strode out of the room, leaving Emily with the heavy weight of his unspoken grief. Despite his retreat, the moment had opened another crack. He had shared something deeply personal, however briefly. It was a step, a crucial step, towards understanding the man beneath the billionaire. Emily knew then that his past held more than just heartbreak, it held profound, unhealed wounds. Days later, Emily discovered a small, locked room adjacent to the library, unnoticed during her previous explorations. A single, dusty key, intricately carved, lay hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her suite. Driven by a quiet curiosity and a growing desire to understand the man she was married to, she felt drawn to the locked room. She inserted the key, and the old lock clicked open with a soft groan. The room was dark, musty, and filled with old belongings. It wasn't a storage room, but a meticulously preserved space, like a time capsule. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light filtering through the drawn curtains. Emily pulled back the heavy drapes, revealing a sun-drenched room. What she saw took her breath away. The room was a child's bedroom, preserved exactly as it might have been left. A small wooden rocking horse sat in one corner, its paint faded. A collection of well-loved children's books lay stacked on a bedside table. And on the wall, a series of vibrant, whimsical drawings depicting fantastical creatures and magical landscapes. Drawings, she realized with a jolt, that bore an uncanny resemblance to the style of Eleanor's portrait in the drawing room. This was not just a child's room, it was Eleanor's room. And then she saw it. On a small, antique desk, amidst scattered papers and a half-finished sketch, lay a faded photograph. It was a picture of Eleanor, much younger, laughing, her arms slung around a young boy. The boy, with a bright, open smile and eyes that sparkled with mischief, was undeniably a young Jameson. But this Jameson was different. He was full of life, unrestrained joy, a complete antithesis to the broken recluse she knew. A profound sadness washed over Emily. This was the true Jameson, the boy he had once been, before tragedy had hardened him, before heartbreak had built his walls. The room, preserved in time, was a testament to a love lost, a childhood shattered. It was a shrine to his pain, a tangible manifestation of his profound grief. As she looked at the innocent drawings, the joyful expression on the young Jameson's face, a new level of empathy swelled within her. The secrets of his past, she realized, were not just about scandal and reclusiveness. They were about a deep, enduring heartbreak, a profound loss that had shaped the man he had become. And she, in her unlikely position, was now privy to a piece of his soul he had hidden from the world. The challenge of reaching him, of breaking through his barriers, suddenly felt more urgent, more meaningful than ever before. The discovery of Eleanor's room, a preserved sanctuary of lost innocence and profound grief, deepened Emily's understanding of Jameson. The cold steel facade he presented to the world wasn't just a shield, it was a tomb built around a shattered heart. The vibrant drawings, the childish laughter frozen in time within those walls, spoke volumes about the light that had once existed in his life, and the darkness that had consumed it. Emily didn't mention the room to Jameson. It felt too sacred, too personal. Instead, her kindness grew more deliberate, more persistent. She continued her small gestures, leaving him a perfectly brewed cup of tea in the evenings instead of coffee, knowing his aversion to coffee in the later hours. She found an old, slightly dusty astronomy book in the library and left it on his bedside table, remembering a fleeting comment he had once made about celestial mechanics. She hoped these small acts would communicate understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of his hidden depths. He, in turn, began to respond in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. During their silent dinners, his gaze would occasionally meet hers, a fleeting moment of connection that was devoid of his usual guardedness. He started leaving her articles on art and architecture on her desk, clipped from various journals, a silent acknowledgement of her interests. One morning, she found a single, perfect white rose from the greenhouse placed on her pillow, a gesture that spoke volumes without a single word. The ice around his heart, though formidable, was slowly, tentatively, beginning to melt. Her mother's recovery reached a significant milestone. Sarah was discharged from the rehabilitation facility, her strength nearly fully restored. She insisted on moving back to her old apartment, cherishing her independence, though Emily ensured she had full-time care and continued financial support. The gratitude in her mother's eyes was a constant reminder of the purpose of her contractual marriage, a sacrifice that was now yielding tangible, beautiful results. With Sarah settled, Emily found herself with more time to focus on Jameson. She began to spend more time in the areas he frequented, silently working on her sketches in the study, or reading in the library while he reviewed documents. She was present, a quiet, non-demanding presence that slowly, subtly, began to chip away at his solitude. One afternoon, she was in the library, sketching a complex architectural detail of the room. Jameson entered, his presence a silent force. He stopped behind her, watching her work. She continued, unperturbed, her charcoal moving with practiced ease. "Your mother is recovering well," he stated, his voice a low rumble, breaking the silence. It was the first time he had initiated a conversation not related to business or household matters. Emily looked up, surprised but pleased. "Yes, she is. Thanks to you, Jameson." She met his gaze, her eyes conveying her sincere gratitude. He nodded, a slight softening in his eyes. "The best care. She deserves it." He paused. Then, to her astonishment, he asked, "What are you sketching?" "The carvings on the mantelpiece," she replied, turning her sketchbook slightly to show him. "The details are exquisite. They tell a story." He leaned closer, his dark eyes studying her drawing. Then the mantelpiece. "It was carved by my great-grandfather," he explained, a flicker of something almost akin to pride in his voice. He was a master craftsman. It was a small conversation, but a profound breakthrough. He was sharing, offering a piece of his family history, inviting her, however subtly, into his world. Emily seized the opportunity. She asked him about the family, about the history of the mansion, about the art that adorned its walls. He answered, initially with brevity, but slowly, as he sensed her genuine interest, his words became more expansive, his voice less guarded. He told her about his great-grandfather, a man of immense talent and quiet strength. He spoke of his own childhood in the mansion, before Eleanor's death had cast a permanent shadow. He spoke of Eleanor herself, her laughter, her boundless creativity, her vibrant spirit. As he spoke, his eyes held a profound sadness, but also a glimmer of warmth, a brief illumination of the joy that had once been his. Emily listened, her heart aching for the young boy who had lost so much. She didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. She simply listened, her presence a silent testament to her empathy. As weeks turned into months, their conversations grew longer, more intimate. They would sit by the roaring fire in the study, discussing everything from global economics to ancient philosophy, from classical literature to the mysteries of the universe. Emily found herself drawn to his brilliant mind, his vast knowledge, his unique perspective on the world. And Jameson, in turn, seemed to relax in her presence, his guard slowly lowering, revealing glimpses of the insightful, deeply intelligent, and profoundly wounded man beneath the billionaire facade. He began to share his fears, his anxieties about the pressures of his business empire, the relentless scrutiny he faced, the loneliness that came with immense wealth and power. He spoke of the betrayal he had experienced in the past, the reason for his reclusiveness, the source of the scandal that had haunted him for years. It was a story of a business partner's deceit, a carefully orchestrated smear campaign that had cost him dearly, not just financially, but emotionally, eroding his trust in others. The reclusiveness, he explained, was a self-imposed exile, a way to protect himself from further hurt. Emily listened, her heart aching for the depths of his pain. She offered comfort, not in words, but in her presence, her unwavering support, her quiet understanding. She was not just a contracted wife. She was becoming his confidant, his anchor in a world that had betrayed him. One evening, after a particularly long and emotionally draining conversation about his past, Jameson reached out, his hand gently covering hers. His touch was warm, comforting, and surprisingly tender. His dark eyes, no longer guarded, held a vulnerability that moved her deeply. "Emily," he said, his voice a low, rough whisper. "I never expected this. I never expected kindness." His words, simple yet profound, filled Emily with a warmth that spread through her entire being. She had married a broken billionaire to pay her debt, but in doing so, she had found something far more valuable, a connection, a burgeoning bond with a man who, beneath his formidable facade, desperately craved warmth and understanding. The debt was paid, her mother was well, but the terms of the contract, the mere transactional nature of their marriage, now felt utterly insignificant. Their connection had transcended the contract, blossoming into something real, something unexpected, something precious. But Jameson's past, she knew, still held deeper secrets, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to emerge and threaten everything they had built. The confession of his past betrayal, the story of his deceitful business partner, and the orchestrated smear campaign was a pivotal moment. It was the first time Jameson had truly lowered his guard, revealing a wound that festered beneath his hardened exterior. Emily listened, her heart aching for the profound hurt he had carried for so long. She offered no judgment, only a quiet, unwavering presence, a silent testament to her acceptance. Their relationship deepened exponentially after that. The silent dinners became a thing of the past, replaced by lively conversations, shared laughter, and often comfortable silences filled with a newfound intimacy. Jameson sought Emily's opinion on everything, from business strategies to interior design choices for the mansion, which slowly, under her gentle influence, began to shed its austere chill and embrace a warmer, more inviting ambiance. He began to introduce her to his trusted inner circle, a small group of loyal advisors and friends who, sensing his subtle transformation, greeted her with cautious warmth. Emily, in turn, found herself falling for him, not for his wealth or his power, but for the brilliant, complex, and surprisingly vulnerable man beneath the hardened shell. She saw his fierce loyalty, his quiet generosity, his profound sense of responsibility. His occasional rare smiles became her most cherished reward, illuminating his dark eyes with a warmth that melted her heart. The contractual marriage, born of desperation, had blossomed into an unexpected, powerful love. Her mother, Sarah, witnessed this transformation with a mix of relief and gentle curiosity. "He seems to genuinely care for you, Emily," she observed during one of Emily's visits, her eyes twinkling. "And you, my dear," look happier than I've seen you in years." Emily simply smiled, her heart full, unable to deny the truth of her mother's words. One rainy afternoon, as they sat in the study, a comfortable silence stretching between them, Jameson confessed another layer of his past. His voice was low, laced with a familiar sadness. "Eleanor, she was involved in a car accident, a drunk driver. It happened when she was just starting college." He paused, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames in the fireplace. "I was driving." Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The profound weight of his guilt, the source of his endless pain, suddenly crashed over her. "Jameson," she whispered, her voice aching with empathy. "It wasn't your fault. You weren't the drunk driver." He shook his head, a muscle clenching in his jaw. "I was distracted. We were arguing. It was a stupid, trivial fight. If I hadn't been so stubborn, if I had just focused, she would still be alive." His voice broke, raw with decades of self-blame. "I survived. She didn't. I carry that with me every single day." Emily moved from her chair and knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. They were cold, trembling slightly. "Jameson, you can't blame yourself for someone else's crime. That drunk driver is responsible, not you. Eleanor wouldn't want you to carry this burden. She loved you. You were her brother." Her voice was soft, persuasive, brimming with genuine compassion. He looked at her then, his dark eyes filled with unshed tears, a vulnerability so raw it almost broke her heart. For the first time, he let himself truly be seen, truly acknowledged the depths of his enduring grief and guilt. She held him, offering silent comfort, letting him lean on her, providing the solace he had denied himself for so long. The revelation of Eleanor's death and his deep-seated guilt was a crucial step towards his complete healing. With Emily's unwavering support, he began to slowly process his grief, to challenge the decades of self-blame. He started talking about Eleanor, sharing fond memories, speaking of her vibrant spirit, not just the tragedy of her loss. Emily encouraged him to visit her grave, a silent, poignant act of remembrance that allowed him to finally begin to let go of the corrosive guilt. Just as their relationship reached a new level of intimacy and trust, a shadow from Jameson's deepest past began to emerge. A series of anonymous, vaguely threatening letters started arriving at the mansion. They were unsettling, hinting at knowledge of his past, particularly the scandal with his former business partner, but also subtly referencing Eleanor, and even the circumstances of their tragic accident. The tone was insidious, designed to evoke fear and uncertainty. Jameson dismissed them initially, attributing them to disgruntled former employees or persistent paparazzi. But Emily, with her newfound understanding of his vulnerabilities, sensed a deeper malice. The letters were too specific, too personal, hinting at knowledge that only a very select few would possess. The peace they had built, the fragile happiness they had found, felt suddenly precarious. Then, an old, highly incriminating photograph was anonymously leaked to a prominent tabloid. It showed Jameson, much younger, at the scene of Eleanor's accident, his face contorted in agony, being restrained by emergency personnel. The accompanying article, sensationalized and speculative, hinted at a darker truth, questioning his role in the accident, suggesting negligence, even hinting at a cover-up. It was a brutal attack, a malicious attempt to resurrect old wounds and tarnish his already fragile public image. Jameson was furious, his face reverting to the steel mask Emily had first encountered. He retreated into himself, the old reclusive habits threatening to resurface. He was convinced it was his former business partner, a man named Silas Vance, finally enacting a long-dormant revenge. Silas had always been ruthless, a master of manipulation, and had disappeared after Jameson had exposed his initial betrayals. "He's trying to destroy me," Jameson stated, his voice flat, his eyes cold. He wants to ruin everything I've built, everything we've built. Emily felt a surge of fear, but also a fierce protectiveness. She refused to let him retreat into his shell. "We won't let him, Jameson," she declared, her voice firm. "We'll fight this. Together." They immediately enlisted Arthur Jenkins, Jameson's loyal lawyer and friend, a man known for his discretion and his relentless pursuit of justice. Arthur began an intensive investigation, tracing the source of the leaks, digging into Silas Vance's past, trying to find a pattern, a weakness. The battle was not just for Jameson's reputation, it was for their future. The secrets of his past, once buried, were now violently unearthed, threatening to destroy the love and kindness that had blossomed between them. Emily knew that overcoming this new threat would require not just resilience, but a deep, unwavering trust in each other. The true test of their bond had just begun. The leaked photograph and the insidious articles plunged Jameson back into a familiar darkness. The steel facade, which Emily had worked so hard to chip away, resurfaced with a vengeance. He became withdrawn, his eyes clouded with a familiar pain, his voice terse. The fear of public scrutiny, the trauma of old wounds being reopened, threatened to undo all the progress they had made. Emily watched, her heart aching, as he wrestled with his demons. But this time, he wasn't alone. Emily refused to let him retreat into complete isolation. She remained a constant, unwavering presence, offering quiet support, a steady hand to hold, a listening ear for his anxieties. She continued her small acts of kindness, leaving him comforting teas, bringing flowers from the greenhouse to his study, a silent reminder that warmth still existed amidst the storm. She read him articles about people who overcame public scandals, subtly highlighting stories of resilience and redemption. "We will face this together, Jameson," she reiterated repeatedly, her voice calm and firm. "You are not alone." Arthur Jenkins, a pillar of calm amidst the escalating crisis, launched a full-scale investigation. His team of legal and digital forensics experts worked tirelessly, tracing the anonymous letters, scouring the internet for the source of the leaked photograph, and digging deeper into Silas Vance's shadowy past. The initial findings confirmed Jameson's suspicions. The digital breadcrumbs pointed directly to Silas Vance, a man who had effectively vanished from public life after his previous betrayal of Jameson. Arthur discovered that Silas had been living under a new identity, quietly building a network of influence, driven by a simmering, pathological hatred for Jameson. The leaked photograph and the malicious articles were just the tip of the iceberg, designed to destabilize Jameson, to chip away at his public image before a more devastating attack. Silas's ultimate goal, Arthur discovered, was not just ruin, but public humiliation, a complete dismantling of Jameson's empire and reputation. The gravity of the situation solidified. This was not just a legal battle, it was a psychological war, a chess match where Silas was using Jameson's deepest pain as his weapon. During this stressful period, Emily became Jameson's unwavering anchor. She attended every meeting with Arthur, absorbing the complex legal jargon, offering insightful observations that often surprised both men. Her calm demeanor, her sharp intellect, and her unwavering belief in Jameson's innocence were invaluable. She urged him to remain proactive, to not let Silas dictate the narrative. "We need to counter his attacks with truth, Jameson," she insisted one evening, as he paced restlessly in the study. "Not just defensively, but offensively. We need to show the world who Silas Vance truly is." Jameson, still struggling with the reawakened trauma, found solace in her steadfastness. "He is a master manipulator, Emily," he conceded, his voice weary. "He twists facts, preys on doubt." "Then we expose his method," she replied, her eyes firm. "We expose his lies. We show the world the truth of Eleanor's accident, the truth of his past betrayals. We fight fire with sunlight." Arthur, impressed by Emily's strategic thinking, agreed. They decided on a bold plan. Rather than simply defending against Silas's attacks, they would preempt his next move with a public counteroffensive. They would organize a press conference, a controlled environment where Jameson would finally, fully, share his story. He would address the rumors about Eleanor's accident directly, revealing the true circumstances and his profound guilt, but also shifting the blame to the drunk driver where it belonged. He would then expose Silas Vance, detailing his past betrayals and presenting the irrefutable evidence of his current malicious campaign. The idea terrified Jameson. Public speaking was anathema to him, and revealing such deeply personal pain to the world was a daunting prospect. But Emily stood by him, her hand warm and reassuring in his. "This is your chance to reclaim your narrative, Jameson," she urged. "To finally put an end to the whispers. To truly heal." They spent days preparing for the press conference. Emily helped Jameson craft his statement, ensuring it was heartfelt, honest, and compelling. She encouraged him to practice, to speak from the heart, to let his genuine pain and his unwavering resolve shine through. She reminded him that this was not just for his reputation, but for Eleanor's memory and for their future together. The day of the press conference dawned, crisp and clear. The ballroom, usually reserved for gala events, was packed with a throng of journalists, cameras flashing, microphones bristling. The tension in the air was palpable. Jameson, dressed in a somber, impeccably tailored suit, looked pale but determined. Emily stood beside him, her presence a silent, unwavering pillar of support. Jameson approached the podium, his posture rigid, his gaze sweeping across the expectant faces. He took a deep breath, and then, in a voice that was initially hesitant but gained strength with each word, he began to speak. He started by addressing the rumors surrounding Eleanor's death, his voice filled with raw emotion as he recounted the tragic car accident, his profound guilt, and the devastating impact it had on his life. He admitted his part in the argument, his momentary distraction, but firmly placed the blame on the drunk driver. He spoke of Eleanor's vibrant life, her dreams, and the deep love he had for his sister. Then, he shifted his focus to Silas Vance. His voice hardened, filled with a cold, clear resolve. He exposed Silas's past betrayals, detailing his corporate espionage, his financial manipulations, and the initial smear campaign that had driven Jameson into his reclusive existence. He presented the irrefutable evidence Arthur had meticulously gathered: forged documents, damning emails, and a paper trail of Silas's illegal activities. He revealed Silas's new identity, his current whereabouts, and the malicious intent behind his recent attacks. The room was silent, captivated by his powerful, raw confession and his devastating exposé. Journalists scribbled furiously, cameras flashed relentlessly. Jameson, usually so guarded, laid bare his soul, his vulnerability captivating the audience. "Silas Vance is not just attacking my reputation," Jameson concluded, his voice ringing with a fierce conviction. "He is attempting to destroy my life, my family, and the future I am now building with my wife, Emily. But I will not let him. I will fight for the truth, for justice, and for the memory of my sister." He then turned to Emily, his eyes softening, a profound love shining through the remaining layers of pain. "Emily has shown me a kindness I never expected," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "She has helped me heal, to face my past, and to build a future I never thought possible. She is my strength, my anchor, and together we will overcome this." Emily met his gaze, her heart overflowing with love and pride. The press conference, initially a terrifying prospect, had become a powerful testament to his courage, his vulnerability, and the strength of their bond. The secrets of his past, once wielded as weapons against him, were now exposed to the light, stripped of their power. The battle was far from over, but Jameson had taken a monumental step towards his full reclamation, and their love, forged in the fires of adversity, had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever. The press conference was a seismic event, sending shockwaves through the media and financial worlds. Jameson's raw honesty about Eleanor's accident, coupled with the irrefutable evidence against Silas Vance, painted a compelling narrative that gripped the public. The image of the fearsome, reclusive billionaire was replaced by that of a courageous, deeply wounded man fighting for his truth and his family. Public sentiment shifted dramatically, from speculation and fear to widespread sympathy and admiration. Silas Vance, exposed and cornered, became the subject of intense scrutiny. Arthur Jenkins, leveraging the public outcry, swiftly moved forward with legal action. Law enforcement agencies, now armed with concrete evidence, launched a full-scale manhunt for Silas. The shadowy figure who had manipulated from the depths was now hunted, his elaborate network of deception rapidly unraveling. For Jameson, the immediate aftermath was a period of intense public attention. Interviews were requested, documentaries proposed, but he navigated it with a newfound composure, his trust in Emily and Arthur unwavering. He spoke about his sister, his voice now imbued with warmth rather than just sorrow, honoring her memory publicly for the first time in decades. He acknowledged Emily's pivotal role in his transformation, his gratitude evident in every word, every subtle touch. Their relationship, previously a private sanctuary, was now on full display. The world saw Emily's quiet strength, her unwavering support, her profound kindness that had melted the ice around a billionaire's heart. The narrative shifted from a marriage of convenience to a powerful love story, one that resonated deeply with a public hungry for genuine connection. The mansion, once a cold, silent fortress, now buzzed with a different kind of energy. Jameson, no longer a prisoner of his past, began to embrace life with a vigor Emily had only glimpsed. He resumed his work at Zenith with renewed passion, but also with a balanced perspective, prioritizing his time with Emily and his rekindled love for simple pleasures. They took long walks in the estate's gardens, now vibrant with the flowers Emily had nurtured. They shared quiet evenings by the fire, discussing their dreams, their future, their plans for their shared life. Emily continued her art, finding inspiration in the renewed warmth of their home and the vibrant landscape around them. She even began to paint portraits of Jameson, capturing the newfound light in his eyes, the subtle easing of his jawline, the quiet joy that now often graced his features. He, in turn, looked at her art with an appreciation that went beyond mere aesthetics, seeing his own journey reflected in her brushstrokes. Weeks turned into months. Silas Vance remained at large, a lingering threat, but the immediate danger had passed. The legal noose tightened around him, making his apprehension inevitable. Jameson and Emily, however, chose not to let his continued evasion overshadow their newfound happiness. They focused on their life together, on building a future free from the shadows of his past. One crisp autumn morning, as they sat having breakfast on the sun-drenched terrace, a sense of profound peace settled over Emily. Her mother was thriving, her medical debt a distant memory. She was married to a man who loved her fiercely, a man she had helped heal, a man who now openly cherished her kindness. The contract, the initial desperate agreement, had long since ceased to matter. Jameson reached across the table, taking her hand. His gaze was warm, tender. "Emily," he began, his voice soft, "I know our marriage began under unconventional circumstances. A contract, a debt to be paid." Emily smiled, intertwining their fingers. "It brought us together, Jameson, and for that, I am eternally grateful." He squeezed her hand. "It's been 2 years now. The contract is due to expire next month." His eyes searched hers, a hint of vulnerability in their depths. "I want to renew it, not as a contract, but as a commitment, A true marriage for the rest of our lives. Emily's heart swelled with emotion. This wasn't a proposal born of desperation or obligation. It was a testament to the genuine love that had blossomed between them, a culmination of shared vulnerability, unwavering support, and unexpected kindness. "Jameson Drake," she said, her voice husky with emotion, "I would be honored to renew our marriage, not just for a contract, but for a lifetime, with all my heart." He smiled then, a genuine, unreserved smile that lit up his entire face, mirroring the joy in her own eyes. He leaned across the table and gently, tenderly, kissed her. It was a kiss that sealed their love, a promise of a future built on genuine affection and enduring trust. Just as the world seemed perfectly aligned, Arthur Jenkins called, his voice urgent. "Jameson, Emily, they found Silas Vance. He was apprehended trying to cross the border. He's in custody." A profound wave of relief washed over them. The final shadow from Jameson's past was finally, irrevocably, removed. The man who had caused so much pain, who had tried to destroy Jameson's life, was finally brought to justice. With Silas Vance behind bars, the last piece of their puzzle fell into place. Jameson and Emily stood on the precipice of a future unburdened by past traumas. They renewed their vows in a private ceremony at the mansion, surrounded by their closest friends and a fully recovered Sarah, her eyes brimming with happy tears. It was a celebration of love, resilience, and the power of unexpected kindness. Jameson continued to lead Zenith Innovations with his characteristic brilliance, but with a newfound human touch. He became a philanthropist, dedicating significant resources to mental health initiatives and support for victims of trauma, a testament to his own journey of healing. Emily's art flourished, her canvases now vibrant with the colors of her transformed life, her work celebrated for its depth and emotional resonance. Their story, once a tale of a broken billionaire and a desperate woman, became a legend of love found in the most unlikely of circumstances. Emily, who had married a broken billionaire to pay her debt, never expected that her kindness would not only heal him, but would also lead her to a profound, enduring love and a life far richer than any monetary fortune could buy. They built a life together, filled with laughter, understanding, and the quiet joy of a love that had defied all odds, proving that even the coldest hearts could be melted by the warmth of genuine human connection.